Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me today, we've got Jameson Maxwell, Ty Lee, and we are here to talk about Oklahoma's fourth loss of the season, 38-35 at home against the Baylor Bears. Second straight year losing to Baylor and Dave Aranda. And guys, it's starting to feel, these losses are starting to feel kind of similar. And it's the same issues just over and over again. And we've discussed it on the pod that, is this something that could be fixed this season? And overwhelmingly, it appears that it's not. So, Jameson, I'm not sure where we start here. Do we start with the offense, with the defense? Like,
we just got to start as a whole.
Yeah,
honestly,
just a lot of bad.
Yeah. The thing is, and I kind of been hinting at this the past couple weeks, but this loss was because we seem to not be able to put all the pieces together. Last week, I said, I liked that defense. I don't know how much it was just Iowa State's offense, but I like what they showed there. And we've seen in the past, Jeff Lebby and Dylan Gabriel usually have played really well at home. We put up big amount of points. So if we can just put that defense we saw versus Iowa State together with some home offense, like I felt pretty good about this game. But the thing is, it felt like the Kansas State game. Really what it felt like. It seems like Baylor had control for a lot of that game and Oklahoma was just kind of scrapping. And it just seems like we just can't put the pieces together to have a complete game.
Yeah. Ty, your thoughts?
I really feel like this one is one that we lost. Obviously, we're going to dive into it a little bit more, but I mean, even just looking at the statistics, those turnovers really start to jump out at you because I felt like, honestly, and this is a pretty, I guess we might as well get it out of the way. I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I didn't really feel this bad about this one, honestly. Like it's what I saw from the offense. I'll say, and I'm not trying to do a Dylan Gabriel bit. I'm sure one might come up later on the pod, but what I saw from the offense,
it's 100%.
Yeah, but what I saw from the offense was I didn't really hate any of it. I mean, we had 3 interceptions, 3 turnovers, which obviously I hate, but guys were getting open. We were having big plays. We were running well. I'm sure maybe there is some criticism for the play calling, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of time dedicated to Dylan Gabriel. But even on the turnover drives, I mean, they were good. They were good drives. We were stringing things together. So it comes down to, what do you want to argue about the turnovers? People argue that they're tips, which is just bad luck 3 times in a row. I don't know. I went back and made sure to rewatch the replays because I watched them in person. I think they're all 3 were bad throws, and there were some other really, really bad throws as well in there that didn't get intercepted because there was just no one there. But yeah, I honestly, I did not feel that bad about it. And I know that's going to be an unpopular opinion, but it did not feel like any of the other losses to me. I felt like we were competitive pretty much the whole time and just kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. There wasn't like a big thing that, I mean, the defense, obviously we'll get to that as well, but it didn't necessarily feel that bad. And if the team doesn't improve, I feel like there was improvements. If the team doesn't improve from where they are at this loss, I still think we'll be pretty fine. I mean, we might still, Oklahoma State is completely broken now, so at least we might win that one. So we'll see.
Oh yeah, no, Bedlam is in play. Probably going to be on I don't know, public access TV airing at 6 a.m. at this point. But no, it's hey, look, that feels winnable. I think OU, they're not, this isn't a total disaster. I'm with you on that. I feel like I personally wasn't as upset. And I think that's kind of because what does it matter? It just depends on what bad bowl game we go to at this point. That's what OU's playing for. And, at the wedding you and I were at, Jameson, I feel like Bowden Blake was trying to rile us up and really laugh at us. And I'm like, hey, there's nothing going on here, man. Like you can't, there's nothing you can do to hurt us at this point. But in terms of how the team played, let's go ahead and talk about the offense a bit. It did feel like it was moving well. They were progressing. The play calling was all right. It just, you can't make 3 turnovers like that in a game where, I think OU and Baylor were pretty evenly matched. That is the difference. That is absolutely the difference. And in a game that was decided by, the turnovers. And not only that, but I also feel like there were a couple really dumb discipline things. That penalty before the field goal attempt that OU missed before the end of the first half. That was tough. There were a couple backbreaking moments, specifically that personal foul. I can't remember who it was where they just ripped a helmet off after a third down stop. That type of stuff is backbreaking, and it's the difference between winning and losing this game, especially when. I don't think OU is. Yeah, I think it's even with Baylor. So that's the difference, and that's the type of thing OU needs to start shoring up.
Here's the thing, and I think y'all kind of mentioned it. One, talking about just the overall feelings of this. College football is, there's so little that you can do in a season. And then that if you screw up very, very early, then like your season's out the door is what I'm trying to get at. Oklahoma, we have very, very high standards. So whenever we lose early, our mindsets completely shift. So yeah, these losses don't hurt as much anymore because kind of our end goal that we had envisioned with this season, it's not attainable anymore. So right now we're just trying to find just little things that we can, hold on to. But with the turnovers and like the little things that you're talking about, Bobby, just look at the first half. Like, come on. Let's go through the play drives, and you're going to be stunned if you like read into it. We ended the half 24-21 down, which I think is pretty good. But let's talk about it. Touchdown on the first drive. Second drive, we throw an interception. Third drive, touchdown. Fourth drive, interception. Fifth drive, we go turn it over on downs. Sixth drive, touchdown. Seventh drive, interception. Eighth drive, missed field goal. Do you see any punts? No. All of those were turnovers, missed field goal, and touchdowns. Like, there were some good things in that first half. We should have had better opportunity to get a lead, and we just didn't.
Yeah, OU only punted twice in the entire game, which is pretty wild. Poor Michael Turk didn't have time to go to action. Maybe that's what it was. We left our best player out on the bench. But Ty, your thought. Let's what do you think about what James said?
When we're talking about the turnovers, first off, anyone that listens to us regularly knows that I have been anti-Dylan Gabriel since probably week one, at least. I probably started setting the groundwork in week two, certainly. Even when people were on his train a little bit. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, right? And I'm not saying anyone should react based on one game. What I will say about the Dylan Gabriel situation, because I don't think I necessarily have anything big to add that we didn't touch on the importance of the turnovers as they relate to the game itself and how the game turned out. But I will say I saw, obviously there's a lot of talk about Dylan Gabriel, and there's a lot of people reacting very emotionally, especially after the game, saying that he's not good, which I don't disagree with, let me say. But I saw a lot of people arguing, especially some of the more, I don't want to say calmer heads, but I saw a lot of the journalist crowd reacting, like the OU, I'll say by name, like Eddie Radosevich specifically had a tweet saying, people saying that Dylan Gabriel isn't good need to remember what the performances were like without him, and without getting into the big argument again about how the TCU game was before he got injured. I will say that in my belief, I don't feel like that tweet is sort of targeted at my opinion, but I will say that you can simultaneously hold the belief that Dylan Gabriel specifically was a single point of failure that lost us the game, and also not think that we need to replace him with Bevel. Like he can be bad. He can have a down game. Yeah. So I'm seeing a very like binary discussion in some of the fan bases. So I don't want to touch on that because that was something that jumped out to me. It was I don't think anyone should be reacting. People are saying, oh, he's our best option. I think that probably is the case. But at the same time, you can't be saying, hey, we can't criticize this guy because he certainly needs to be criticized. And the argument of are OU fans spoiled with their quarterback situation or not, that's a whole nother argument altogether. But he was not. I understand people make the argument, oh, all of the interceptions were tip balls, which is true, but go back and watch them, and most of them are being tipped by Baylor players that were really just dropped interceptions by a Baylor player, and there was another Baylor player there to scoop it up. Like they were not good passes. You know, it's not like, hey, the receiver just brain farts, it bounces off his face mask and somebody gets it. And then there were some other very, very questionable passes. And I will say, people have said it before, the Dylan Gabriel height thing. I sat down like low. I think we were in like row 10, down in the south end zone. And looking at his height compared to the lineman from that angle, which I haven't seen a game, I've either seen him on TV or a little bit higher. He's not able to see over the line, which is the cause of some of those. That's not new analysis, but I was like, oh, this is actually pretty extreme.
Yeah, the short quarterbacks can do successful, but he just doesn't do well extending plays, and that's what short quarterbacks got to do. Even guys like Drew Brees. And you think about him like looking over his offensive line, legitimately tilting his neck back to look over. He still had to extend plays. You think guys like Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, shorter guys that need to get out of the pocket and extend the play. Kyler. Dylan Gabriel does not extend any plays. He can be a disappointing and not that good of a quarterback. And we don't have to play reference game with Davis Bevel and General Booty and Nick Evers. He can be bad, but also better than the other people behind him.
Yeah, I think this game in particular, he tried to force too many things like that particularly that first interception. I mean, you and I were looking at it, and it's like, what is he even like really planning on doing? It was a bad throw in the first place, and it's something that he improved on from the beginning, but it feels like he's gone backwards, where instead of just kind of airmailing it, throwing it away, he's kind of forcing it a little bit, and because of that, those turnovers happened.
We don't throw anything in the intermediate. It's only short and long balls. So like there's just nothing really for him to really dissect the defense with. We're pretty one-dimensional in the past.
He doesn't have a lot of options. They don't give him options.
No.
I almost disagree. What I was about to say is I might be completely off base on this analysis, but I think what we saw a little bit today was Jameson specifically. One of his criticisms of the offense has been, his words, and I'm not trying to, but his words, as I understand them, were Jeff Lebby has too tight of a leash on Dylan Gabriel. If we gave him a little bit more freedom, trusted him a little bit more, he could make things happen. And I feel like maybe that's what we saw a little bit in this game, because he had some good moments, and he had some moments where I could tell that he was looking, down his options and stuff. But this is also, just going to happen sometimes if you trust a guy. So you have that trade-off sometimes. And you can also make the arguments. I said before, yes, all the interceptions were deflected and then intercepted by someone else. I think they were all bad passes. But at the same time, a bad pass being deflected and then the chance of someone being there, that doesn't always happen. So there is some chance in it. But I think you have to find that balance and that trade-off. And even with 3 interceptions and in this game that I think ultimately could be pointed to as the single point of failure before we get into the defense, I think I almost like this a little bit more. Trust him, let him make mistakes. It's fine. I'm not saying, the season's over. We should obviously tanking's not a thing. And I'm not saying, we should just give up hope. But I trust him a little bit more. We've already lost 4. I don't want to say what's the worst that can happen, because at this point we know that things can always get worse, but I don't hate, trusting him a little bit more and letting him make mistakes. I'd rather at least see what happens. It makes for more entertaining football than having a dude on a super short leash and not letting him do stuff.
Yeah. And Jimmy in the YouTube comments on our live stream brought up a great point. He also kind of forced it in Kansas game. He had maybe less so because a couple of those were like fumbles and all that. But the reason why that what didn't hurt us as bad, why we won the game still, is because the defense was able to perform well. That was not the case this time. What?
I do want to say,
I don't know how well
this. We let them.
Let's not use. They played better, not well. Better. So clarify our verbiage here.
Before we start segueing into the defense, I do think we need to rope back to the offense. And I like to mix in some positives or some funny things. This one is going to be a little bit more beneficial to our live viewers. But as I said, I was sitting down real close. We're going to do a quick break from the negatives. We'll dive right back into the negatives for all you haters out there. I'm the biggest OU hater. So I'm excited for that, but we'll mix in a positive. As I said, sat right down close in the south end zone on the home side. We presented Roy Williams with his College Football Hall of Fame introduction, and there were a lot of people there, a lot of people standing a mere like 10, 15 feet in front of me. Also right in front of us was the Baylor cheerleaders. Our man, our beloved, the king, Barry Switzer, as you can see for the YouTube viewers, quick YouTube pitch, spent about 3/4 of the game just talking to all the Baylor cheerleaders. So if you were worried about it, the king has still got it. He was still down there. And I'm not talking like, oh, we got to be polite to the old man. Like he started talking to one on the corner, and then they were all coming over to hear what the king had to say. So Barry Switzer still got it if you guys were worried about that. Also said hi to the Dr. Pepper sheriff as well. So he's doing well. So there's our positive break for everyone. No free ads for Dr. Pepper, but it is always nice to see the Boz at the games. Back to the negatives. We tied in some positives. Now let's go back to Hayden.
I will say, I think there were a couple good performances on offense, though. Eric Gray, his 106 yards, 23 carries, not his most spectacular performance, but still really good. I thought Gabriel did a pretty good job on the ground as well. His running performance, especially in that first drive to get that touchdown, was really, really nice.
That was a good play.
And Marvin Mims, he had himself a day. 120 yards on 4 receptions, including that just massive bomb that we couldn't really see on ESPN Plus because they were zoomed in too close.
You guys couldn't see that?
My God, Ty, did you see all the stuff?
I saw some of the highlights after, and it would just be zoomed in on Gabriel, and then it zooms out a little bit later.
God, it was bad. It was ESPN horrible. Plus. Our favorite one was the diagonal and horrible yellow first down line, because even though it was just diagonal, sometimes it would just sometimes be completely wrong. It'd be 2nd and 4, and it would be 15 yards down the field. And I was like, whoa, what is going on here? Things were quite clueless all around. And this was not a good experience for me. I bought ESPN Plus for this month because I wanted to buy the stupid Denver Broncos game in London. And I'm like, oh, might as well just watch the OU game too. God, I am canceling that subscription so fast.
It is bad. We talked about, fan experience. There's in-person fan experience. And then there's also the on TV or the broadcast fan experience. I will say also, not to get on to people, this completely came up to me, but this is on the topic of ESPN Plus and fan experience. I know someone who rented one of the rental we set it up for you tailgates. And guess what those include if you pay for it? Cable. Guess what those don't include? Wi-Fi or ESPN Plus. So everyone that had a rental tailgate and was not going into the game had to either have some sort of puck or stream it from their phone hotspot. And let me tell you what, it was not a popular environment in the white rental tents. I'm not trying to get on a company that does that, but there was a major someone not noticing. There was a lot of people planning on it, and that thing had cleared out later on in the game. I know some people that spent big money on that, and then everyone ended up down there watching Georgia, Tennessee, trying to listen to it on their phones because phone service.
Who the hell's running that? Everyone knew that was on ESPN Plus. That was a huge speaking. Obviously, this person only cares about money and they don't care about OU football. That was so
big,
bad.
That's brutal. That's
big fumble.
They should give refunds. They should give significant refunds on that. They better do something.
That's so bad.
Because I believe people paid extra. I will have to ask, but I believe you pay extra to get the cable or the satellite out there. Yeah, so
that's not included.
People were, it was a tough scene down there when I went down there and realized, I was like, hey, why you guys, because I left a quarter early and I was like, hey, go down to the tailgate to watch the rest just to kind of get the head start. And I was like, hey, why are we watching Georgia, Tennessee right now?
Oh no.
So
that's so bad.
Yeah, that was a rough scene. The receivers. I think the receivers had a great game. Mims specifically, I think He had a really good game, and I constantly have to this is my only take that I feel like is credible analysis on receivers. I talk about how in college, the depth of secondaries is sometimes not all that great. So if you're known to be the best guy, you're going to get all the coverage, and it can help the second or third receiver down the totem pole. And my take is sometimes it's better to be WR2 at the college level because you get the little bit worse defenders and you can have a better game, a less challenging opponent. I think maybe I'm just confirmation bias, perhaps, but I think Jaleel Farouk specifically becoming a big threat that people are seeing, receiving and rushing, is sort of opening it up for Mims. Because one of the criticisms I saw earlier in the season with Mims and Gabriel's interactions specifically was I felt like maybe it's Gabriel short leash, maybe it's whatever, but I felt like previously there's been a lot of stuff that's been forced to Mims, and it's been sort of watering down his stats because it's not a situation where he should be throwing the ball, and he is. And here, like that big touchdown and some of his other plays, I feel like he was benefiting from the other options around him, that tremendous depth in the receiver room being exercised. I'm not sure if you guys feel the same, but I mean, you can't dispute Farouk had a great game here. Again, Stoops had a really great game, typical good Stoops game. But Mims specifically, it just seemed like he was more in his comfort zone, especially that touchdown you guys missed. That was right there in front of me. And just, I could see the smile on his face as he came in, like running towards us, like into the end zone, and then doing the finger guns running along. He felt more comfortable, didn't have his shoulders down throughout the game. So I feel like he was feeling a little less pressure, and things were starting to develop in that receiver room.
Yeah, I think that's key because I kind of think early on we were expecting Theo Weiss to kind of make a jump, never really did. He's definitely getting portaled, I think. And, it just, even though we aren't seeing a ton of receivers get receptions, there were, only 6 players who caught a pass on Saturday. I feel like they're more potent. I feel like that having those, I don't know, they're showing up a little bit more than they were to start the season.
I think we need to get Braden Willis more involved. I feel like in that first drive, we were looking at him a lot more, but for the rest of the game, I really didn't see Braden Willis get as involved. I think he's one of our better receivers. You could make the argument that he's the second best receiver on our team ahead of Jaleel Farouk. It just seems like he was such a big part of that first drive, and then just things kind of dropped off. I just don't know within the scheme if they just have as many tight end play calls. It's just kind of disappointing for me because I feel like a good tight end is a kind of a safety blanket for a quarterback whenever they're struggling. You can throw it in the inside, in the middle of the field. You don't have to throw it to the outside. And I feel like our past quarterbacks here at OU, like whenever a tight end's doing well, it's just like things seem to click a lot easier. So that's kind of been disappointing for me, but maybe that can change.
Yeah. No, I agree because he did have that one target that led to a pick. That was probably the one pick that was probably the less bad of the two, where it kind of, I don't know, like some people online thought he might have been a little bit of a PI situation, got one hand up and tapped it. But no, I agree. Willis has been one of our best players across the board, and his work with the Wildcat has been good. Would have loved to see him do a little bit more of that instead of Major.
Agreed. We were yelling about that. I understand having the running back there. You're only going for a yard. Give it to Willis, right?
Yeah, you would think so, right? He's big enough. Just go in, fall over. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's obviously way more difficult than that. But
yeah, we're very simply looking at it. Ty, you got anything else before we kind of hit defense? Because I think we probably
we kind of just briefly touched on the rushing, like we talked about. Gray had a 100-yard game. Dylan Gabriel rushed for 70 yards. I feel like I don't want to be all down on him, and this is what I was talking about early on in the podcast. Was I feel like I wasn't too upset about the game because I felt like things were working, and I fault Dylan Gabriel for all 3 interceptions. But at the same time, I do acknowledge that some of that is chance, at least in my opinion. And he had one of his best rushing games of his entire career. Like a lot of the stuff we were doing was working. And Gray, he had a lot of those workhorse runs. Major also got a lot of those workhorse runs, but I have to touch on rushing. I mean, we had 238 yards, it looks like, for the team. So, I mean, the things we were doing were working, and you can make all sorts of arguments in retrospect of, maybe we would have won had we rushed a little bit more. Maybe we would have won had we had a bit more urgency in our last touchdown scoring drive and left a little bit more clock out there. Who knows? But I think in closing on the offense, my last thought on it was the stuff we were doing was broadly working the entire time. I mean, I understand we had 35 points, but 35 points when you only punt twice and then turn it over 3 times means every other time you had the ball, it was working. And I didn't see any play calling that I had a super big issue with. And again, I don't want to continue to down on Dillon Gabriel. It's not like, obviously he's listening and I don't want to depress him, but Dillon Gabriel, if you're listening, please don't transfer. Oh no. Yeah, I don't want to be too down on him because I feel like a lot of the stuff did work. So this one hurts, and I'm not trying to say, I don't care about us losing this one, but I don't necessarily know if this one is indicative of what's to come for this team. Maybe that's hope. Maybe that's a coping a little bit, but this loss did not feel like the earlier 3 losses. And I honestly feel like this is really controversial. This is the real fringe controversial end of my take. Our performance in this loss, obviously some caveats, almost felt a little bit better than our performance in the win against Kansas. That's very controversial, but those 3 interceptions not gone the other way, this one could have been very different. So
yeah, because I think Baylor is a better team than Kansas by quite a bit. Aranda obviously still a very good coach. Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, definitely a better
Baylor Kansas game. Obviously, Baylor handled them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A little bit.
Well, that's
yeah. Not
I mean, you can play the common opponent, Oklahoma State. We gotta hit on some people while we gotta kick other people while they're down too. But
no, this Baylor team's pretty good. So I'm not. I mean, shoot, they might have a chance at winning Big 12 even if things break the right way. Conference is a bit nutty. K-State got another loss. Baylor's still sitting there with Baylor only has 2 conference losses. Keep in mind. I don't know. They feel like a team that could get hot. I feel like they've improved a lot since the start of the season, when they're losing to BYU and stuff. But let's talk about the defense.
K-State, TCU, Texas. So we'll see.
Everyone that's ahead of. Well, yeah, that proves your point though, Bobby, because everyone that's ahead of them in the conference they've yet to play. So that does make sense, I guess. But
yeah, I gotcha. But let's talk about that OU defense. Absolutely gashed would be the way to describe it in terms of the rushing defense. Squirrel Williams. I don't know if they're announcing him in arena or in stadium as Squirrel, but no, that was his name. He ran for nearly 200 yards on us, and essentially just they got what they wanted. Baylor did not really struggle to move the ball at all. I don't know what to think about this. And Jameson, your thoughts on it? And I don't know what's wrong with the defense.
I wanted us to stop the run because I felt like that was the way to win this game. And whenever you see kind of Reese not doing anything, and it's on to Squirrel, I felt positive. But that 4-man front defense and our run stopping game just didn't look the same as I've seen it in the recent past. It was kind of concerning, to tell you the truth. And Baylor obviously just has a lot better physicality than a lot of the teams that we've played in the past. But it's once you have the running game getting to the second level, almost every single play, everything starts to go down because the players get tired a lot faster. And essentially you're just playing on a third of your defense not being a part of it if all they can do is freaking bull rush and not get in the right gaps. So we're playing, with the hand behind our back.
Yeah, the second level was not great. Missing run fits, missing gaps. It all just kind of fell apart. But I agree. And I agree that the D-line got completely outclassed. I think size-wise, Baylor's one of the bigger teams we've played on the O-line, and I think that gave us a lot of troubles. I think that gave OU a lot of troubles, and once again, they do not play well when they can't just overwhelm an offensive line. That's the biggest difference between this game and Iowa State. Iowa State's O-line is awful. So, Ty, you got it.
Here's the thing. It was the run game that lost us the game. Even down the Baylor's very last drive. If you just watch that, you would see why OU lost the game. Excluding the turnovers, just watch Baylor's very last drive of the game. You see everything that was wrong with the defense. Squirrel Williams had an absolute crazy game. They weren't announcing it in the stadium. They weren't saying Squirrel, but I had some Baylor fans that were sort of like right behind me. They kept yelling, "Come on, Squirrel." But they had like really weird timing with it. So for like the first half, it wasn't exactly clear if they were talking about the running back or if that was just a nickname for Baylor or something, like a War Eagle or like a Crimson Tide elephant, situation, or like War Eagle, but like the mascot is a tiger type situation. So I didn't know if I was just missing something and they were called the Squirrels or something like that. But so it was not clear. But this dude Squirrel had 50% of his rushing yards this season, and we're in week 10 against us here. He's been playing, one of the years was a red shirt. He has been playing college football every year since 2018. He had almost 25% of his career stats in this game. And the infuriating thing was, I don't want to diminish his performance. Obviously, he won. I think he was the one that really beat us, but he just wasn't getting touched. It wasn't like a Marshawn Lynch beast mode run, or like a, turning it back to like a Ramondre Stevenson, or just trucking through someone, Adrian Peterson type run. It was just like, hey, Squirrel, here's the ball, go through this gap. He's not that big of a dude. He didn't necessarily seem that quick or like he had that much agility, which if you look at his stats for his career, bears it out. The dude's had years where he's played in more than 10 games and put up less than 100 yards on the season. He just wasn't being touched. Like no one. The gap was just wide open. No one touched it. And that's on our defense. That is not
freaking Narnia. God.
Yeah, that is not on. And that's because that's when you're not getting touched and you're getting into the secondary, the deep secondary and putting up big stuff. That's not even on the D-line anymore. I mean, and you can, I don't know if it was necessarily apparent I don't know how the commercials were cutting on the plus itself, but if you were paying attention, we did have, I don't want to say injuries, but we had sort of our linebackers, Ogwebu in particular, seemed like he was coming out a lot. And then on the sideline was dealing with trainers. And I know that stuff doesn't usually get on TV. And I know there was one where he was sort of injured and they paused play for him, but there were several times where I was starting to notice it and pay attention. When the offense was on the field, he was overworking with the trainers and the medical staff. And then there were several times where he was subbed out and then immediately, instead of going and resting and getting water, he seemed to be dealing with something persistent throughout the game. So there were some other issues beyond play calling, but our defensive schemes and stuff, they need to improve.
And we need some portal guys from the front seven too. Like it just ain't working. And I was telling this with Bobby, and we've said this in the past, like we don't have any pass rush either. There's just none. Absolutely zilch. And it makes us so one-dimensional of a team that people can just scheme us out. Like you don't realize, like think about like the NFL. What players get the most money on the defense? It's the cornerback that can shut down any wide receiver. And then the next one is the pass rusher. And right now,
Gerald McCoy, best OU player to ever play in the NFL.
Well, not a pass rusher, but like it's just a bummer that both of those positions, I feel like we don't have the guy. And then whenever you don't have that, it puts so much of the weight on the shoulders of the linebackers, and the linebackers can't fit the gaps. So we don't have the skill positions that are the most needed for a successful high-end defense. And the safety valve, our crutch, they break every single time we put weight on them.
Yeah. It truly felt like Baylor at any point in time could just get 3 yards every play because
Yeah.
look, that's kind. Here's the thing: if you run it 3 yards every play, that's first down. Especially if you're going to go for it on fourth down, which Baylor did. And didn't really have a lot of issues
And
converting.
we can never
here's
stop a damn fourth
that
down.
is a
Nobody
that is
can.
a really that was one of my big talking points, because here's one stat that if you hear it, it's one of just this stat alone, just this specific stat group. If you look at it, one of our best defensive performances all year. Baylor was 4 for 13 on third down. That is really, really good for this OU defense. But then they were 3 and 3 on fourth down. And Aranda had the skill, and I'll say skill and will, to call those fourth down plays when they needed to happen. He had the skill to call the right play, and then the will to make that call and say, hey, we're going to go for it. Particularly, there was one, I think they were on their own 30, sort of, when it was a 3-point game. Maybe it was a 7-point game. But yeah, I got to give Aranda some credit for that, because he knew that they could do it. And that the fourth down stuff bothers me so much when it's in a situation where it's not necessarily like a desperate time, because it feels like, if people go for it in a desperate time, like the same situation where you'd be kicking onsides and stuff, everyone's going for it at that point because your back's against the wall, you have no other option. But it reminds me of the old sort of final days of Mike Stoops, or some of the really troubled days under Grinch, where there was just no respect for this OU defense, and teams knew that they had 4 downs against us if they got it to fourth and less than 3. And that's what we saw here. It was in their game plan. I understand analytics, are changing the game some, and that's becoming more common across teams and things like that. Fourth downs are more common in some sort of regular game time now than they have ever been, but it hurts. Those ones hurt more than anything else to me, because it's just people just know, like, this defense cannot stop me. And it's because like we've touched on constantly, it's almost a triage situation with the personnel that we have, and with our scheme, I think is not that great. That is to some extent hobbled by personnel and talent, but it just seems like we're constantly playing from our back foot defensively. I think offense, there's a lot of stuff to criticize talent-wise with quarterback, and there's some play calling stuff, but I feel like we have a fairly good chance against most defenses that we have played. Obviously the time we got shut out is one thing, but defensively, it seems like every game the defense is the underdogs with any team that we're playing, unless it's just a historically bad offense like Iowa State. Like, if you just look at the defense to offense matchup, I don't think our defense is coming in as the favorite in any game on our schedule all year once we got into Big 12 play. And you're seeing that, and people know that, and that just hurts as an OU fan. Maybe I'm not used to being the fan of the college football team where people are expecting to do well against you, and then they do. That hurts. It's different than an upset. If you think that you're the best, you're supposed to be the best team, and you get upset, then that's whatever. It's an upset. It's not supposed to happen. That's why there's a term for it. But when people are just like, oh yeah, this OU defense, they suck, we have 4 downs against them whenever we want, because we have a dude named Squirrel who's only rushed for like 100 career yards in like 5 years, and he's going to put up 200 yards against them because they're garbage. Like, that just hurts.
Yeah, because it sucks seeing a team come out on fourth down and just not really being like, oh, we're going to get them, we're going to stop them here. That was a mistake. We're going to make them feel like it was a mistake. It's just like, no, they're going to get it. It's not a problem. It's really kind of, it is disheartening. It really is. But we've known for a while, a couple of weeks here, that this team is not where it needs to be, and it's going to take some time, and it's going to take new players coming in that can fit this system. And I think they've flexed the defense where it works a little bit better with the players, but at the same time, I don't think it's the system that we need to win games, because it's just not to win games, but to dominate, to play well. Because it just gets gashed. It just feels like a bend don't break, and it gets really, really, really damn bendy. But it breaks. It always breaks.
We're breaking. We're definitely breaking. And I think that the biggest conversation that we've been having this whole season, it's on all the message boards, it's on all Twitter. Like, I see this everywhere where there's any kind of OU content. People are talking about, like, is it the coaching or is it the players? At this point, I think that we can't even make the decision, and we can just have to punt that conversation to next year. Really, because I can't differentiate it. I see, like, I'm reading like the comment boards on TFB, and I'm seeing like pictures people are posting where, you know, Danny Stutzman and is legitimately right next to God, what bless Jaron Kanik.
Yeah,
Just going down the wrong gap over and over. Like, this is something that the coaching staff is not putting into play. Like, that's just Danny doing the wrong thing. So once we get, you know, another year under their belt, and they continue to do it wrong, I think that's a player thing, because they've got to be in the right spots. You know, Brent Venables is not calling up plays where there's two linebackers going down the A gap.
Yeah. No, because I think I know that exact clip you're talking about. I'm pretty sure Keegan Renault posted it, and it
was on the goal line, like the 1 yard line.
Yeah,
it's embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing.
Yeah, Squirrel just walks in because it's a poor read. It's a football IQ issue. At that point, it's not. It's very hard to make those decisions in game and have your offense or defense be based on that. And then they're also not good at making them, because you have to make the right reads or else it completely blows up.
Here's the thing, and I don't think it's a perfect analogy, but I think it is good enough. You know, we're fitting the triangle peg into the square hole here. So we can, if you guys went to kindergarten or OU, because this is something OU's higher level courses also are fitting peg into hole courses. God. But you can fit the triangle peg into the square hole in this analogy here. And it's a rough one, but I think it applies. I think it's not necessarily as apparent, and it's because it's a less apparent position because there's more than one. But I think if you look at the Dillon Gabriel, and if you hold the belief, Dillon Gabriel is bad, shouldn't be the starter at OU, that I hold, the catch-22 is we currently don't have anyone better. It only gets worse from here. And I think that situation, talent-wise, on the depth chart is not unique to the quarterback position. I think on the offense, that's unique to the quarterback position. But I think on the defensive side, it's a little harder to see. It's a little less emblematic. Emblematic is probably not the right word to use there, but it's harder to see because there's multiple people in each position. But I think at this point, you're in a bad situation either way, right? If you're like, do we blame the coaches or the players? I'm of the belief that hopefully it's the players, because the players are constantly rotating. Coaches rotate a little bit less. But I think right now it is the players. I think defensively, especially, it's the players to some extent. And I think that Dillon Gabriel's situation of the talent is not good, but it's the best we have, that triage situation, very much applies to a lot of the defense. And that's one of the reasons we brought Venables in, was because he was a defensive guy. That was something that was a hot topic to a lot of people, and a lot of people felt like offenses specifically, you know, we had Lincoln Riley. You can make whatever arguments you want about Lincoln Riley and his offensive mind, but what we've seen recently in recent history in college football is that there is a ton of talent when it comes to offensive coordinators and being able to make points happen and run novel offenses. And I think, reading into what I've heard a little bit about the head coaching decision, obviously Venables was going to be the favorite, but I think people were of the mind that a defensive-minded head coach, one that could recruit those hard-nosed, big D linemen and linebackers, particularly, that OU hasn't been known for in recent memory, was going to be the deciding factor. Because it seemed to me like people felt like even if you only get an OC for 2 or 3 years, there's a whole lot of OCs out there that can make talent and make points happen on the board. But we need a defensive-minded coach that's going to be able to recruit and build that system like Georgia has done, like Clemson did in the past, like Bama has done, like some of these more successful systems. And I hold out the belief, I'm still fully on the Venables train. I don't think, Ted Roof, that's a whole nother thing right there. But I'm wholly on the Venables train still. And I think defensively, I don't want to blame the players, but I'm not blaming the coaches, if that makes sense.
Let's talk about Ted Roof. What do you think is going to happen with him? I mean, I told you, I think he's just a scapegoat. I really don't think he really has too much say in this defense at all, but I feel there's definitely more likelihood that he gets sacked in the offseason.
I think he was hired as a scapegoat. I think he's the Bishop Sycamore of coaching. Look at his record. He goes places for like a year or two and then gets fired. But he keeps it's like a Lane Kiffin, failing upward situation. I think you can hire him to blame him for stuff. I think I think there's a movie based around a principle like that. Like you can hire someone and beat him up in front of your girlfriend or something like that to make you seem tougher. That's that's his niche in the field. He's the Bishop Sycamore.
He's like that one guy in Breaking Bad who will intentionally go to jail for you.
That's it. That's exactly the analogy I was thinking of.
There
he
we
was
go,
hired
yeah.
in. He was hired in as the Better Call Saul like fall guy to go to jail.
Fake Walter, great value Walter White.
Jimmy In and Out, I think was his name.
That's what it is. Yeah. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, he just shows up and he takes the hit, and there you go. I don't know. Yeah, I certainly think you could be doing more with that.
He doesn't have a say. He doesn't do anything. He's just there. Like, it's all Brent Venables. So it's like, why not just let the public be happy if we sack our defensive coordinator, get someone else in, and who knows, maybe bring someone in who isn't just like all ideas are the same as Brent Venables. Get a little bit of a different say. And even if this new defensive coordinator doesn't have any power, it would be just nice to have a different perspective in the coach's room.
Yeah. Instead of just kind of a yes guy, because what he essentially is he is a defensive analyst that is legally allowed to work with the players, is essentially what he is. Because, exactly. The defensive analysts, they can't actually talk to the players. They can just kind of look and observe. And that's what he's doing. He's doing the exact same thing he did at Clemson when he was a defensive analyst and couldn't talk to players. So
you guys think it's like, I don't know. I don't see Venables talking into his headset and stuff that much. I don't necessarily buy the belief that Venables is calling all the defensive plays, because he doesn't seem to be doing enough to do that. Maybe that is the situation, but I guess I could get on board with, we need someone to tell the dictator that the rocket does not have to be pointy. To use another movie reference.
That's another thing that I've been seeing a lot on boards and Twitter and stuff. It's like, what is really the vibe with Venables? Like, we seem like he's this program guy who's fiery and people get behind, but I don't see, like, whenever they cut to him on the sidelines, and I've seen other people say this, is he really that fiery guy? Like, it seems like he's just kind of just locked into the game. His press conferences, and a lot of people on the boards are saying, like, man, this guy just does not shut up. Like, what are we getting from this? Like, this is kind of like, I don't know if he's kind of gotten settled in to being the head honcho in this position. It seems like he's still trying to figure out, what exactly do I need to do as a head coach? What figurehead to the public and to my locker room do I need to show to get everybody in the right mood? Because this lecturer that's just rambling, answering all the questions, spending hours in press conference, and but being like non-demonstrative on the sideline ain't it.
It's like he's trying to be someone he's not.
It's like he's trying to host a podcast.
No. Oh God. No, I still believe in Brent. I'm still all in on
I do too. Yeah. Even what I said after that.
But yeah, and I'll say this, like, looking back at his time as their youth defensive coordinator, there was a drop-off because the recruiting wasn't there. And that was a program-wide issue. That wasn't quite a him issue. And once he got to Clemson and got his guys again, the defenses were good again. So I will say, I think overall, some of it is, yeah, he is really a good coach, but only when you have this, and this. Are you a good driver if you can only drive well in a Corvette? Like, if you give someone a Honda Pilot, they just can't drive, is it the pilot's fault, or is it
an F1
the driver's fault? This
is a Bobby reference.
Maybe
this is a Honda engine. Oh,
I went a little bit. I went a little bit. I guess like Brent there. I just went on about something, but maybe it's a learning curve. I see a lot of people in our chat are saying he looks like he's bitten off more than he can chew, and maybe that's true. But maybe this was a lot more of an issue than we might have thought. Like, this might have been a bigger deal. Yeah.
So I was going to say, I have 3 points. My first one is, I'm of the belief that being a head coach is very different than being a coordinator in a lot of situations. And I think that Venables sort of holds that belief as well. And I think that is affecting people's expectations, because I think people, OU fans, especially if they're used to really seeing him, they've been watching OU for a while, in his days under Stoops, where he was very fired up, he was very animated, he was very in the players' faces and stuff. And I almost like his transition, because I think when you become a head coach, you don't want to be the good cop, you don't want to be the nice guy that people take advantage of. But just from what I've been taught traditionally and sort of leadership stuff is the most senior leader should not be the one that's having to go over and make those corrections. Obviously when things are really going wrong, then you need your head coach to be fired up, which I think we've seen. But I think people are sort of expecting to see the same Brent Venables that they saw as a defensive coordinator. And I personally don't think that I would feel worse if I saw that. Like, I would like the head coach to be a little more level-headed and locked into the strategic level of the game, instead of down in the minutia of getting upset about individual players. Dealing with the refs obviously is a head coach specific thing and stuff. But I sort of like the tamer Brent Venables as a head coach. There also is a learning curve. It's even if there is, I kind of buy into the fact maybe he's not fully prepared to be a head coach yet. That's fine. It's, there is a learning curve. That's not necessarily a problem. Everyone understands it with players. If you have a freshman quarterback come in and he doesn't win the Heisman his freshman year, no one is super upset. They expect that. I feel like with coaches, sometimes people expect, instantaneous stuff. You have the famous Nick Saban went 6-9 his first year at Bama, but that was not his first year as a head coach. He had a lot of head coaching
played
experience.
15 games
prior to that. Yeah, well, I don't remember. Maybe it was 6 and 6. I don't know. It's he won like 6 things. It's like a famous, like, it always comes up on message boards with people trying to justify their bad.
They lost to ULM that year.
Yeah, but there is a learning curve to that. Like, you expect him to develop and get better. Lincoln Riley was not the same coach when he got hired as he was now. So it's his first year as a head coach. I don't necessarily know if it's that big of a problem. If it persists, like we talked about with the players, then yeah, you start to get worried. But I'm not too worried this season, especially with the personnel issues that we've had. And then I think the third point that I have is the stuff that wins a game as a head coach, especially if he's not one that's directly involved in play calling. Obviously, we can argue that on the defense or not, but it's a lot of it is a performance. People will get upset if he's over their level and you're super upset about we lost the game and he doesn't seem that upset. And then you're saying, it's like a relationship argument thing. It's like, why aren't you upset? Like, I'm upset. You don't seem that animated and upset, so you must not care. And I think some of it is an act, and I think some of it is a performing art that maybe he's going to learn a little bit more, or maybe not. But I think that, your emotions or how animated you are or how well you conduct a press conference, maybe not is indicative of how good you are as a head coach. Because I think the stuff that wins the game as the head coach is being on the recruiting trail, coming up with good hires, coming up with schemes. It's all the stuff that you don't see and never see because it's not open to the public. Because when you're recruiting, you're committing violations and crimes that you don't want exposed to the public. But then you're not showing the public how you're developing your playbook. You're not showing the public what you're seeing in the film room and stuff. And I think that is the stuff that really matters. So there's lots of great dudes that don't do great press conferences. The F1 reference, the current world champion 2 years in a row now is boycotting press conferences with certain media people altogether because he's maybe being a bit childish. He's still the best one to do it currently. So, I understand those criticisms, but I think that I'm not saying I'm more level-headed than anyone else, but I have a different take on it, certainly.
I think that's fair. Because you do have to have a different tenor as head coach. And I think you are right it does look like, oh, they don't care. If you're not mad, you don't care. But like at the same time, you have to be level-headed. You have to operate everything. But I don't think specifically there's anything that I can see head coaching wise that is like, that's the primary issue. I think there are a laundry list of issues with OU. But for me, it's not like this is a Brent issue, like specifically. obviously unfortunate that we lost this game, but I think you could point to other things. Specifically, the type of player we have right now just doesn't work for defense. Dylan Gabriel made mistakes. There you go. That's the end. But I don't think it's anything specifically Brent did wrong. I think it's going to take some time, and he said that from the get go. This is Team 128. It's going to take a couple years. Yeah. I mean, definitely a hedge, but it's the truth, I would say.
Yeah, I think last kind of overweening thing for me, unless y'all have anything else before we kind of quickly talk about what we want to see from this West Virginia game this weekend, is this loss. It sucks losing as Oklahoma fans. We hate it, and especially at home, it just does not feel right. But there's really nothing that's changed in what we're talking about from the past episodes when we were winning. My mindset of this team and what I think of them is probably the exact same thing. It just kind of reinforced it even more in this game. And the loss to Baylor, it sucks. I understand we're the favorite, but I see it. The game just didn't go our way.
Yeah. No, it just didn't work. And I will say, I think they're getting better. I think this team loses to Baylor by a lot more a couple weeks ago. So, I don't know. Let's move on to West Virginia, though.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Ty.
No, I was just gonna say it didn't feel that bad. I understand people that are mad. I personally was not that upset, and it was a great atmosphere to go to the game. Unless you paid a bunch for a tailgate and then got cheated out of it. But I know I personally hung out. One of the people I hung out with before the game was a USC fan who was very impressed with OU and felt sorry. He even took a picture with Boomer and Schooner and told them sorry. He's doing
the sports nice thing that we hate.
Yeah, I converted some people to OU fandom, and it was a good showing of the university, and it was a good game. So hopefully no one is too heartbroken over it. I don't want to be the season's already down the drain. It is, but Jameson will roast me if I say that on the podcast. But it wasn't that bad. And
one more win for a bowl, baby.
Yeah, the march to the guaranteed rate bowl continues, Ty.
Yeah.
Currently,
that's a good segue.
Yeah, currently, I'm looking at bowl projections because that's always fun. Currently slated to be playing Iowa in the guaranteed rate bowl at a baseball stadium in Arizona.
I love that because Iowa's just different colored Iowa State, and we know we can beat that one. So.
Oh my god!
Iowa's famously their head coach earlier this year, when asked what stat do you think is the most irrelevant to college football, their head coach with a straight face said offensive yardage. So, which maybe he was right because we had like 100 more yards than Baylor. It's still lost. So I don't know. Bad. Maybe old friends was right, but
yeah,
it's West Virginia.
Another bad option would be First Responder Bowl in Dallas at Gerald Ford Stadium against UNLV. So,
I mean, I would enjoy that one a lot more.
Yeah, I would like that one more. It would be kind of. I'm sure Blake would be like, "Oh, Rebels, let's go." So it could be kind of fun, but. Anyways, let's move on to West Virginia. The Mountaineers. Now, look, if we want to talk about a team having a bad year, West Virginia has been brutal.
They beat
the Neil
Baylor.
Brown experience just not working out. They did beat Baylor somehow. 3-6. They're currently on a 3-game skid. Only one Big 12 win, which was Baylor. Jameson, West Virginia. Mentioned in the comments earlier, shout out to 1982. Never beat OU, has not beaten Oklahoma in conference play. Are you worried about that changing this weekend in Morgantown?
Every time you play in Morgantown, you get a little bit worried, even though what you've seen from West Virginia as of recently isn't as concerning, especially, 31-14 loss with Iowa State. That is not a pretty one. Not pretty at all. And then the 48-10 with Texas Tech, they're going the wrong direction right now after that momentous win versus Baylor. But this is going to be interesting for OU. It's going to be a completely different game, in my opinion, than what we're seeing that we just saw versus Baylor. Obviously, we're not playing in our home comfort zone. We're playing away, and we're going to have to go against more of a high-end passing offense that will put our cornerbacks and our safeties to the test. People can kind of make fun of West Virginia, but I think they got some legitimate players at the wide receiver position that could give us some problems. I think Sam James is good. I really like what Bryce Ford Wheaton can do. I understand that their offense has been a little bit anemic, but they have some tools. If they could put it together, it could still create some problems for our guys on the outside.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen a lot of West Virginia this year just because they've been playing on weekdays a lot. And you're right, they're not lame ducks. Bryce Ford Wheaton, like you said, is a dangerous option. And I will say one thing that is kind of nice. They don't really have a great running back situation going. Currently their leading rusher is a tight end. So there's that. So that's a plus, I would say. But it's not like we've been really great, a really great passing defense. And West Virginia is better in Morgantown. They have a little bit of life there. I think this is the first time we played them at noon there. Every time we play West Virginia, it's always like a freaking night game. So that's a plus. But I don't know. I think the Mountaineers, look, with this OU team, I think they have a chance to beat every single team on the remaining on their schedule, but they also have the chance to lose like we saw last week. I think we see a lot of these, 38-35 type of performances the rest of the way. And whether Oklahoma wins or not, it's pretty much a coin flip. Ty?
I expect this one broadly to be similar to the Kansas game. That's what we saw from Kansas against OU was not necessarily what we saw from them all year, but I think this one is going to play out pretty similarly. Unfortunately, JT Daniels, arguably the quarterback that we should have gotten. Whether he's good or not, he's at West Virginia, so put Dylan Gabriel on this West Virginia team and see what their record is. The West Virginia, the running thing worries me. Like you said, their leading rusher is their tight ends. But if you had looked at last week and someone had come back from the future and said, "Hey, Baylor's leading rusher is going to be Squirrel Williams," and you look at Squirrel's career stats and see that he has less than 400 yards in 4 years, you'd be like, "Oh my goodness. Finally, it's clicked. We're going to run him off the field." So who knows what's going to happen there. But I feel good about it broadly. I think I honestly think the last time we played them, I think our freshman year was a noon game in Morgantown. Or it may have been at 2 o'clock. I believe it was during the day, 2014.
It started kind of early because I remember that was like the day P. Ryan really emerged.
Maybe it was a 2:30 then. Or
I think it feels like a 2:30 or 2 because I remember that one. It was
earlier in the season. I know that. So yeah, if it got dark near the end, then it would have been.
Oh, but it just got announced. I think Donaldson's missing. Well, no, he missed.
Yeah, I was about to say no.
That's old. That's old.
I've been waiting to interject into that. CJ Donaldson's out for the year. He's not playing anymore. He's kind of a gadget guy. They change a pace. He's no longer playing, so that's why he didn't play last week. He was a good tool for them. Just kind of like sometimes they play him at the running back position, just kind of hand it off, and it seems like he'd always get the big plays versus their running back. So that's definitely a big hit to there.
I took the ESPN sheep feed there. My bad.
Oh, just eating the. Yeah, I guess you weren't paying attention as close to those West Virginia games. You were looking more at the Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech side, weren't you?
I was not keyed in on the West Virginia Iowa State game this weekend. I apologize.
ESPN constantly does that though, because they know they can get clicks from people that don't follow teams. So they'll list a guy, they'll be like, so and so is out, and he's been out all season, but they'll write a new article every week, knowing that the opposing team's players will stumble into their watch an ad trap with headlines. So I don't necessarily. I've fallen for that one before as well, Bobby. Another thing with West Virginia, though, they hung in there with Baylor, which arguably we also did. We lost by 3. It should have been by 10, but they hung in there with TCU as well. So that one is a bit alarming. And then even in their losses, they performed well in Morgantown. Tougher place to play than LSU, I will say.
Man, yeah, that take is gonna have to get defended whenever we get on the pod on Wednesday.
Right? How many? You guys have both been to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, correct?
not to a
that's where
game,
the
but in
student is.
passing.
I passed through and saw the Tiger one time.
Exactly. Okay. I've been there multiple times as well, not for a game, but just the fact that you can go there, it's accessible already makes it a little bit easier. I don't know a single person. I know a guy that literally went to West Virginia for a year. He's never even been to campus, which is pretty common for West Virginia students, actually. I'm not even talking a COVID year. I'm just talking enroll and stay in Pittsburgh and party. That's most of their student body. But yeah, so jokes aside, it is a challenging, it's almost not a bowl like atmosphere, but it certainly is a big ordeal to get out there and play. So that certainly is a factor that I guess we've already touched on. It's, you're always a little scared in West Virginia. I don't necessarily know if it's a West Virginia thing or an atmosphere thing. Certainly there's a little bit less, scariness when you're playing at noon somewhere, but the travel and the whole ordeal of it is definitely a factor.
I think that's a good transition to my biggest key to this game. And it's really easy to be lackadaisical coming off of a loss at home. Disappointing, now OU being 5-4, which is just gross to say out loud. And then you go through this whole road trip where you have to kind of do a couple of extra things to get to Morgantown. And the way West Virginia wins games or stays close in games that we've seen this season is big plays. Like I said, through their wide receivers, they throw deep balls, get touchdowns in the corner of end zones, catch teams whenever they're asleep. So if we come out in the first quarter and we're just kind of sluggish and we're not really, doing what we need to do as a football team to get ready for a football game, I could see a couple of big plays getting Oklahoma, down early. We need to be on our game. Hopefully that the coaching staff will get them ready to go. But from what I've seen so far, a team that doesn't have a good rushing attack from the running back game is probably the best thing that we can do, the best opponent that we can have for OU.
Yeah, I agree. That's the biggest issue that we've run into. So, let's see how it goes. OU is currently opened at a 7.5 point favorite, but we will make that pick on the weekend spread later. So stay tuned for that. But I don't really have a lot to say about West Virginia. I don't think they're that great. I think Neil Brown is on the chopping block. I'm surprised he hasn't been fired yet.
I've been saying that for like a month and a half.
I have. My thought process was West Virginia is going to have a bad start. They're going to fire him, try to get someone in there as soon as they can. And they just haven't. So I don't know. But I think he's all but doomed at this point. So
it's going to be at the off season at this point.
Yeah, it's just not working at all. So Ty, final thoughts on West Virginia before we move on?
I got two final thoughts. They're sort of one piece. I think this will be a test or a showing of Venables. We saw a very, very poor showing in our first neutral site game, our first sort of bowl atmosphere with a Venables team. I think this one is also sort of indicative. Like Jameson said, it's very easy, coming off a loss, be hanging your head down. It's a team that we're supposed to beat, so maybe you can feel like you can just flow through like it's a walkthrough and walk to a win and mope around. That is certainly not the case against this West Virginia team, especially with the threats that they present to us. So I think that this one, it'll be hard to say, watching it win or lose, what you can pin it on. But I think this one will be a test of Venables' head coaching ability down the road. Can he get his guys invested in stuff still with the way this season has gone, with a big travel and with stuff like that. And then the final one, a bit more of analysis. They will be passing a lot more. We kind of knew that, but they are a pretty even split. The thing about their rushing stats is it's very, very diluted. I looked at it. They've rushed 317 times this year, 340 pass attempts. So for comparison, these numbers actually surprised me. OU, we've rushed 402 times this season. Some of that skewed by the Gabriel injury. We've only attempted 273 passes. So we're big run heavy for whatever reason. But this West Virginia team is certainly going to be throwing a lot more. So very much on our secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. Big game here. Big bounce back opportunity. Well,
for a bowl berth. This is what we need. Just one more, boys.
Saturday morning, Fox Sports 1.
Then we can coast.
the guaranteed rate field bowl is all on the line or whatever. I don't know.
See, we can make the
March to the
argument.
Liberty Bowl.
Yeah, once we make a bowl, we can make the argument for all the rest of the losses in the season that our players were just preparing for the draft or for next season. They had opted out. They'd mentally opted out. Physically, they're still there, but we have opted out for next year.
They're mentally preparing to play Missouri in the Liberty Bowl. So
we can do the old Bama excuse of our guys just didn't want to be there.
The game didn't matter.
Yeah, the game didn't matter. So saving that one for down the road.
That's funny. Well, folks, that's been this episode of the Schooner Pod. Thank you all so much for listening, either live on our YouTube channel or afterwards on your favorite podcasting app. So always appreciate y'all's patronage of the podcast. So yeah, win or lose, we keep marching on no matter what. Playoff appearance or a Liberty Bowl bid, it doesn't matter. We're still happy to be here.
Said the P word again. He wants to pee.
I do not. I very much do not want the pee.
It could be possible. I mean, if the committee can't put Bama in, they're not going to know what to do with themselves. TCU could do whatever they want to. They're not getting in. So, depending on how the Big Ten pans out, I guess we could see the playoff committee reverting to some sort of eye test and just having OU, Georgia, Oregon, and Tennessee or something like that.
Yeah, no, I could see him just freaking out and be like, Oklahoma's usually here. Put them in. We're fine. But all right. Well, that's all we got for today. We'll see y'all later down the line this week for the weekend spread where we make some picks. I'm very excited about this because it's been, I don't know, it's heating up. It's getting good. So make sure to tune into that for our gambling picks for college football. So, all right, I've done enough rambling. This has been the Schooner Pod. We will see y'all later. Have a good one, everyone, and Boomer Sooner.